Hearts in Exile by John Oxenham. To every heart in exile, this book of hope is inscribed in the sure and certain faith that love still knows the way. Chapter 1. How Hope sacrificed herself for love of the people. You think she will be in a few minutes, Maria? Assuredly, she has passed her time now, said the old woman. She may have called somewhere, said the young man, and glanced doubtfully at her. Sit down, Paul Ivanovitch, she said in a more than simply hospitable tone, and I will get you some tea. She cannot be many minutes now. The old woman nodded knowingly to herself as she went down the passage. The young man sat down for a moment, and then jumped up and began to wander restlessly about the room. How could any man sit still when all his future happiness was in the balance, and when he had good reason to know that the hand that held the scales was no ordinary hand, and might let itself be swayed by no ordinary feelings? Straight and tall and spare of figure, deep-set, trustworthy eyes, dark like his hair, frank, thoughtful face, high in the cheekbones and lean in the cheeks, so that at times one could follow or even anticipate his feelings by the curves and lines that came and went there. Paul Pavloff was distinctly attractive to look upon. For his was above all an invitingly honest face, and one does not come across too many such. Perhaps also there was, in the eager face and strenuous figure, more than a suggestion that such of the good things of life as had come his way had been rather mental than material, had contributed more to his inner well-being than to his outer, that the lower things held but small interest for him, and that he had not greatly missed them. It was a very plainly furnished room, and Paul Pavloff knew intimately every single thing that was in it. Table, couch, chairs, white-tiled stove, green-shaded student's lamp, all were severely simple and without individuality. But each separate article was glorified in his eyes by the high service to which it was dedicated. He felt like kneeling and kissing the chairs because Hope Arskaya used them, the floor because she walked on it, the lamp because she read and thought by it, for all these things pertain to the higher life. He wondered if she had ever thought of him as she sat in the chair or walked the floor. He knew she had, and moreover that her thoughts of him had been pleasant thoughts. But all the same, there were neither books nor papers lying about. The lack of them contributed largely to the austerity of the apartment. But books and papers are dangerous things when one never knows at what moment the steps of the gendarmes may be heard on the stair. On the walls were 3 portraits. Paul eyed them with reverence and stopped his wanderings now and again to look at them, as though they might afford him some clue to the answer Hope Ivanovna would give to the question he had come to put to her. The bearded man with the calm, intent face and thoughtful eyes was her father. He died in the Schlüsselburg casemates, martyred for an idea. High thought and fixity of purpose were the dominant features here, and Pavloff's mouth tightened somewhat as he looked at it. Hope Ivanovna took after her father. The sweet-faced woman was her mother, the Scotch woman. She died a few months before him, broken-hearted at the racking injustice of it all. Hope Ivanovna had her beauty and more, but her spirit was her father's. The bright, curly-headed boy was her brother. He died before she came into Paul's life for its brightening and embittering. He was standing before the portraits, finding likenesses in them all to Hope herself, when the door opened again and Maria, with an apologetic look and shrug, ushered in another visitor. Serge Palma, a strapping, jovial fellow, with blue eyes and light hair and full beard and mustache. Very well dressed and carrying an air of opulence and hearty good feeling towards himself and the rest of the world, in all respects the very antithesis of the first comer. He stopped with a short laugh at sight of Pavloff, and Pavloff's forehead crumpled with annoyance at sight of him. "Hola, Paul, it was not you I came to see," said Palma jovially, in spite of the infelicity of the meeting. "Nor I you." "No, I suppose not," said Palma, with another short laugh. "Moreover, unless I'm mistaken, it is no good our both stopping here at the same time. Is it not so?" Paul regarded him with gloomy annoyance. He was strung to concert pitch himself, and the careless gaiety of the other jarred upon him exceedingly. At the moment he hated Serge Palma most cordially, though as a rule they were on friendly terms enough. "I really don't think you need wait," said Pavloff quietly. "Of course you don't. But then I do, you see, and that makes all the difference in the world." "It will make no difference." "Da! As to that we shall see. But it's no good our waiting together, if you've come, as I imagine you have, to put your fortune to the test." "I suggest, then, the propriety of your retiring." "Of course you do. But again, I don't see it, my friend. Why should I leave you a clear field? First come, may be first served." "That's as it may be, and since I was first here—" "Tell you what, let the fates decide it," said the other with that cheerful laugh of his, which made Pavloff grind his teeth. And Palma drew a coin from his pocket and spun and caught it. "Heads you stop, tails you go." But Pavloff shook his head with an expression of disgust at such unseemly frivolity in so momentous a matter. Palma laughed and uncovered the coin on the table. "You win," he said, "so I go." "If it had been tails, I would have stopped in spite of you, my boy." "I shall wait till I see you leave, then I take my turn." "I'd wish you luck if I had no conscience." "As it is." He nodded and went out, just as old Maria brought in the samovar and teacups. "No," said she, with a wag of the head. "That's right. I'm glad he's gone, if he does not meet her on the road." "You don't like Serge Palma, Masha?" said the young man hopefully. "Not in that way, no," with another thoughtful shake of the head. "He is rich, good-looking, good-tempered." "No doubt, no doubt. But there are better things even than those." Then the door opened and Hope Arskaya came in. And to both Masha and Pavloff, the homely casket glowed suddenly radiant with the brightness of its treasure. "Ah, Paul, mon ami, you have come to share a cup of tea with two lonely old maids. That is good of you. Is it all ready, Matushka? I am later than usual." From the sweet, full tones of her voice to the light, firm tread that bore her so rapidly and so gracefully, she was the embodiment of health and energy, and her beauty was very remarkable. But after the first glow of satisfaction, which fineness and regularity and proportion of feature never failed to produce, it was the purposeful soul shining through the eagerness of the beautiful face, and especially through the great dark blue eyes, which gave her the mastery. It was the knowledge, the partial knowledge, of what was in her that made Paul Pavloff's hand tremble as he took the cup of tea she handed him. For a woman animated by feelings so mighty as those which moved and restrained Hope Arskaya was capable of anything. The one thing that troubled him was the doubt whether she was capable of condescending to so small a thing as the love of Paul Pavloff, to him the mightiest thing on earth. Her greeting was full of hearty fellowship. Nevertheless, the first quick glance she had given him had in it something of apprehension. She knew what he had come for, and she feared the result of the interview, for him, and well, yes, for herself as well, for they had been good comrades for many years, and friendship which aspires to more does not readily content itself with less. "Any callers, Masha?" she asked as she drank her tea. "Is not this one enough, Hope Ivanovna?" said the old woman diplomatically, with a friendly nod at Pavloff, and hastened out of the way of further questioning. "Masha bullies me," said Hope with a smile. "She is a good old soul. You would have been very lonely without her. Sometime she will die, and then, Hope Ivanovna, you will be more lonely still, unless you have someone to take care of you. I have come today to ask you to let me be that one. My heart has been yours to trample on since the first time I looked into your eyes. You have known it." Yes, she had known it. She had known it only too well, and she had looked with foreboding to this moment for many a day as the possible end to their friendship. Under other skies, under other circumstances, it might have been. But as things were, the ordinary joys of wifehood, home, motherhood were not for Hope Arskaya. Rightly or wrongly, her heart was set on other things, and for those other things she was prepared to sacrifice all that womankind holds most dear. Compared with those other things, she held herself of very small account. That was the view he had feared she would take. Nay, he knew instantly, even as he spoke, that he had known it all along, and he knew her too well to hope to move her by any passionate pleading. Her response would have been instant, if response had been possible. One glance from the great dark eyes would have carried his soul up into heaven. But the eloquent eyes, which would have told him so much, remained downcast, and he saw only the shadow of the long lashes on the white cheek. He rose instantly. "Forgive me, Hope," he said as quietly as though his life's hopes had not in the space of a moment crumbled into a heap of burnt-out ashes. "Paul," she said and raised a detaining hand, and there was that in her tone, something of pleading and of pity both for herself and for him, which made him glance quickly at her from under his pinched brows. He stood silently in front of her and waited, so near to heaven, nearer than he knew, yet separated from it by the deep gulf of a woman's invincible determination, and that woman to other women as a volcano to a candle. "My friend," she said at last, and her voice was full and strong again, "you know to what my life is dedicated." She did not look at him, but at the portraits on the wall. "To that end, I am prepared to sacrifice myself, body and soul, and these other things are not for me. You are poor, I am poor. Poverty ties our hands. With all your help, I could do little of all that cries aloud to be done. Yet I want your help. Will you work with me still for the people, Paul Ivanovich, in spite of this, in spite of all? I would lay down my life for you, Hope Ivanovna. You know it. I know it, even though you marry Serge Palma's millions, Hope Ivanovna." He could not keep the bitterness out of his voice. "Ah, he was here. He will be back presently. God help us all. Why does he permit these things to be? If the sacrifice of one can help the many, it is right to make it, Paul. Palma's millions may help to break the fetters of a nation. What am I that I should withhold myself?" "You are the sacrifice," he said sadly, and bent and kissed her hand and went quietly out. Hope sat silently, gazing at the portraits on the wall, past them at what she had put from her, past that at what lay before her. And her eyes were sad in spite of the spirit that was in her, nay, because of it, for she knew as well as any where that path would probably lead her. Old Masha came in presently and eyed her anxiously as she announced Serge Palma. Hope's face was grave and composed as his keen glance swept it. There was an afterglow in the great dark eyes which he took to himself, and courage therewith. "You are welcome, Serge Petrovich," said Hope. "Ah," said Palma with a humorous twinkle. "Condolences, then, to friend Paul," to which her only answer was a slight lift of the level brows. "You know what brings me, Hope Ivanovna," he said in reply. "I am no student and have no gift of words. Will you be my wife?" She looked at him quietly and then asked, "Are you sure you know what that means, Serge Petrovich?" "What it means? To be my wife? I know what it means to me, Hope Ivanovna." "I must be sure of that. Listen to me. You know that I work among the people." "Everyone knows it," he nodded. "Since ever I can remember, the thought of the people under the yoke has weighed upon me, and my heart has groaned with them. My father died in Schlüsselburg, as all the world knows. His only crime was the desire to raise the people out of the slough. My mother went before he did. The same blow killed her. There they are on the wall, and night and day they cry to me to help the work on. It is a good work, and a dangerous and heartbreaking in its slowness, for lack of workers and for lack of funds. If you are ready to join me in the work, I will be your wife." "I will join you, Hope Ivanovna, so long as you don't go to extremes. I am no believer in force as a remedy." Nor I. Brains and money properly applied will bring the remedy in time. It may be slow, but it will come. It must come. It shall come, she said vehemently, and added with quiet conviction, we want to build up, not to overthrow, to plant, not to uproot. I am with you there with all my heart. We will work side by side in the matter. And doubtless in the glow of his passion, he meant it. He had been prepared for some such demand. He had considered it. He was ready to accede to it sooner than lose her. Doubtless, also, somewhere in his mind there was the feeling that altruistic notions such as these were common to most women gifted with intelligence above the ordinary. And if one's heart were set upon such an one, why, you had to take the rough with the smooth, the thorn with the rose. It was a phase which time would overlay. The inducements of a safe, luxurious life would wean her from it by degrees, and there would be no harm done. But that only showed how very little he actually knew of the woman he had asked to be his wife. Her father was that doctor, Ivan Arskoy, whose only crime was his far-sighted love for his fellows and for the best interests of his country. To autocracy and bureaucracy, however, such a man represented social revolution. And so he did, but revolution by natural growth, not by fire and steel. Evolution, therefore, though the results to the bureaucrats would be the same in the end. And since those results must necessarily be extremely unpleasant, the bureaucrats promptly nipped even Arskoy in the bud. He was labeled untrustworthy. Administrative process carried him off one night to the Schlüsselburg. For 2 years he lay there without trial, and there he died. His wife's heart broke against the bars, and Hope, a girl student of 16, was left alone in the world, except for an aunt who took charge of her, and old Maria Ostranaya, her nurse. Hope continued her studies and nourished the faith and hopes of her father. When the guardian aunt died, leaving her a tiny patrimony, she eked out her living by teaching and devoted every spare minute of her life and every ruble that could be saved from the slender housekeeping to that quiet propaganda among the downtrodden for which her father had already given his life. Paul Pavloff she had long known in the schools. She had also been on terms of closest friendship with his mother, Elizabeth Pavlovna, one of those sweet, saintly souls which every land and every creed produces. And Paul, in his high-mindedness and abstraction from the lower things, was very like her, as he was like her in the face and ease. His aim in life and hopes were identical, but he was poorer even than she. His father was a proprietor possessed of no business aptitude. When he died, what remained after the Jews were satisfied was just about sufficient to keep Paul's soul and body together during his university career, and no more. He was a quiet, thoughtful fellow, student still, and teacher in his spare moments of those same awakening ideas which animated Hope Arskaya. Their common interests and common dangers, for it is dangerous in Russia to think of things as they ought to be, and still more dangerous to speak of them, these things had drawn them very close together. So close that Pavlov had even dared to dream of a closer union still. He had told himself 100 times that it was only a dream, and yet he would not banish it, for it was the radiance and glory of his life, the dash of color in the gray without which a man's life flies low on somber wings. Then Serge Palma came upon the scene. He was the only son of Peter Palma of Odessa, Prince Peter by descent from a former petty ruling family, just as Paul Pavlov, if he had chosen, could have claimed a similar title, but wisely forbore. Prince Peter, however, finding, like Pavlov's father, that his rentals were decreasing year by year, had gone into the grain business and had amassed a fortune in it. He died, and his son Serge was enjoying the fruits of his labors, scattering what he had not gathered, dispensing with free hand that which had cost him nothing to procure. He met Hope Arskaya first at the house of Kataya Baranina, whose brother Mikhail was one of his many friends. The girl's remarkable combination of beauty and high intelligence and intense earnestness had made a great impression on him. With wide-open eyes to possible consequences, for Peter Palma's son was no fool, he pursued the acquaintance to its ultimate issue. And now he had asked her to share his life and she, for sake of what she held more highly than any earthly happiness, had consented, on condition that he also shared hers. Chapter 2. How one went forth alone. So, in due course, Hope Arskaya became Hope Palma, and no littleness of mind imputes to Paul Pavloff from the fact that when he got the offer of a small medical appointment in Moscow, he accepted it instantly. And Odessa knew him no more. He was very human, and he loved Hope Arskaya to the very depths of his aching heart. Consideration for his own peace of mind might not have carried him to this final extremity of exile. He might indeed have found a gloomy satisfaction, something not very far removed from a flagellant pleasure, in watching her from afar, meeting her occasionally, and nursing in secret the thought that her heart had surely been his before she consummated her great self-sacrifice to duty by becoming Palma's wife. But he was too big a man for that. If Hope could sacrifice herself for her life's work, so he could sacrifice himself for love of her, it would indeed have been a sore trial to any man to watch from the outer darkness the happiness which, under equal circumstances, might have been his. If he had seen any possibility of service to Hope, he would have suffered and rejoiced. But there was no visible call for sympathy on Hope's account after her marriage with Palma. She seemed quite contented, nay, even happy, and Pavloff, pondering this strange matter in the light of a deeper understanding of her than most, imputed to her neither lightness nor forgetfulness. He had known her better than any, and he knew that compared with the work which she looked upon as an inheritance of sacred obligation from her father, her own well-being, prosperity, happiness, were as nothing and less than nothing. To some, it may seem that altruism so complete as this is visionary and overdrawn. The history of the evolutionary movement in Russia has given us many examples. Not that I would, for one moment, be supposed to hint that Russia monopolizes, or even possesses in higher degree than other countries, this mighty force of self-sacrifice. But in happier lands, the self-sacrificing dree their weirds below the level surface of life, obscure and unknown. Whereas in Russia, their lives and sufferings and deaths are, by force of circumstances, flashed luridly on the screen and set the startled world aghast at times. He saw that she was contented in her new life. His presence in Odessa could afford her no pleasure, might even cause her a twinge of regret at times, for with all the will in the world, a quiet face was all he could compass, and cheerfulness was hardly to be expected of him. So he called upon her once after her marriage to say farewell, and then he went away to Moscow. He might have denied himself even this visit, and he debated the matter within himself for some time before deciding on it. Then it seemed to him that Hope might reasonably feel hurt by such avoidance and by such a lapse from the ordinary rules of courtesy, and he went. Old Masha had followed her mistress into the new life. She received him with all the old friendly favor which would have put him in Palma's place if the turning of the wheel had rested with her. "I will tell her you are here, Paul Ivanovitch," said Masha, scanning his face, womanlike, for sign of his feeling, but lingering still. "I am going away to Moscow, Marya. I have come to say goodbye." "Ach," said old Masha knowingly, and stood looking at him. "Tell me, Marya, is she happy?" "Yes, she is happy, Paul Ivanovitch," and added quickly, "but you know she is not like others. It is not of herself she thinks. It is a terrible great change," she said, waving her simple old hands at the sumptuous appointments of the room. "I am almost afraid to speak aloud at times. It is all so fine, but it doesn't trouble her one bit, and it is not that she cares for. It seems to me sometimes that we have half the poor people of the city on our hands, and there are fresh ones every day." "And Palma is good to you, Maria?" he asked, with an almost imperceptible quiver of the lip, which old Marya did not fail to catch, though her eyes were not as strong as they were once. She knew so well all that lay behind it. "He is very good, Paul Ivanovitch. He is a bigger man than I thought. He is very generous. My God, how the money goes! I'm afraid in the night sometimes that it will come to an end, but there is always plenty next day. I did not know anyone had so much money." I will send you my address in Moscow, Maria. If ever I can do anything for you or for her, will you promise to let me know? Surely. It is good to know one has a friend to turn to. Now sit down, and I will tell her you are here. He did not sit down, but stood looking at the big oil paintings on the wall, Prince Peter and Serge's mother, and Serge himself when he was a small boy, and the rich hangings to the windows and doors, and the carved table and buffet and chairs stole in upon his senses without his knowingly looking at them, though he remembered them all afterwards, because they were the things she lived among. And then the door opened, and he was face to face with Hope herself. She was looking very well, very bright and cheerful, more richly dressed than he had ever seen her, more beautiful than ever. His face was thinner even than it used to be, and his deep eyes deeper and keener and more ardent, she thought. But just the same straight, honest eyes that always met your own frankly and squarely and held no equivocations. Perhaps there was something of a shadow in them now, but it might be only that they looked deeper in their settings than before. In truth, there was in them the shadow of a slight reserve to which she had not been accustomed, for in spite of himself he felt a touch of resentment at her cheerfulness and a touch of anger with himself for so feeling. "You are going away, Paul Ivanovitch?" said Hope when she had greeted him. "I am going to Moscow, Hope Ivanovna. I have got an appointment there. It is not much, but it may lead to more." "You will be missed here. Will you still be able to carry on the work there?" "Oh, surely. I hope to have still larger opportunities. My work will lie among the very poor, and there is never any lack of them." "It would grieve me to think of you dropping it." "I will carry it on as you would have it, Hope Ivanovna, as long as I am able. When you have set it in one's heart, it would be as hard to drop it as it would be to forget yourself." "There is so much to be done, and so few to do it," she said earnestly. "You are always busy?" "Always busy. And quite happy? Quite happy. I have no time for anything else." "I am glad," he said quietly. "If ever I can serve you in any smallest thing, I beg of you to let me know. There is no one I would sooner turn to for help, Paul, if that time should ever come. I wish—" She looked wistfully at him, and he knew that she was wishing it was in her power to do something to brighten his own path in life. But the only thing she could have done, she had not seen well to do, and nothing else was possible. "God be with you, Hope Ivanovna, and give you every good." He stooped and kissed her hand, and she bent and kissed his forehead. "Would you not stop and see Serge?" "No, I thank you, Hope Ivanovna. I leave tonight, and I still have some calls to make." And he was gone. She told Palma of his visit when he came in, and he, in his hearty way, regretted that she had not kept him to dinner. "It's ages since we met, and we used to be good friends at one time. Let me see." And his eyes rested thoughtfully on Hope's face as he cast back in his mind. "Yes, I don't think Pavloff and I have met since our marriage. I suppose that was it. I don't believe Paul Ivanovitch has ever quite forgiven me for carrying off the prize. But really, you know, I was not to blame. Was I now?" "No, you were not to blame, Serge, and I'm quite sure Paul Ivanovitch bears no malice. He will be very lonely in Moscow. I cannot help feeling sorry for him." "Oh, he'll soon make heaps of friends." But Hope knew better, and her own great happiness set his lonely way in deeper shadow in her thoughts. For she was happy. In marrying Serge Palma, she had given but small consideration to her own feelings. And Palma, perfectly aware of that, had set himself diligently to win her to himself. He had tried at first, in the quietest and most unobtrusive manner possible, to introduce into her life new elements of interest, which might, he hoped in time, wean her from those labors among the poor and downtrodden which she looked upon as her great work in life. His manner of life had been, in almost every respect, the very opposite of hers. He had always had more money than he could use. He had always flung it about generously. He had never had to scrimp and save in his life, and self-denial was as absolutely unknown to him as the absence of the necessity for it was unknown to his wife, whereby no doubt he had missed much, and had been to that extent docked of his full stature. He treated Hope with the greatest generosity, gave her everything he thought she could possibly want, which included very much which she did not want at all, and in every possible way showed her that the one desire of his heart was to win her completely, and so round their union into a perfect circle of happiness. In order to win her to his own ways, he found it advisable at times to go hand in hand with her along her chosen paths, and bit by bit, for very love of her, he found himself going further than ever he had dreamed of going. For very love of her, he found himself first tolerating, then enjoying this new way of life because it was her way. Hers was the finer spirit, and by degrees he came to look through her eyes at matters which had lain under his nose all his life, but which he had never seen until his love for her quickened his understanding. She was a whole new world to him, a sweet apocalypse, and by degrees those things which had sufficed him before came to be as nothing and less than nothing to him. The change was very gradual, but it could not fail in time to attract the attention of those who sorely missed the jovial dispenser of largesse in Palma's former circles. His old friends chaffed him and laughed at him. He invited them to dinner, and they fell under the spell of Madame Palma's beauty, to the extent, at all events, of swearing in marvelous language that Serge Palma was a mighty fortunate man. And if they still chaffed him at times for his dereliction from their primrosy paths, his quiet smile turned all their shafts aside and even lodged them in their own bosoms. Not a man of them, but would have done any mortal thing Madame Palma might have asked of him, however contrary to his natural inclination. But Hope had very soon taken their shallow measures, and not one of them did she find worth using in her great work. For that work, while patently and undeniably of the most harmless description, and with no end or aim beyond the uplifting of the helpless and downtrodden, was still work at which the authorities looked doubtfully, if not actually askance, and it needed for its furtherance large souls who could be at once energetic and cautious and discriminating. Even in such simple work as this, there ran a vein of danger in the fact that the downtrodden, when they awake to a sense of their condition and of the causes of it, are liable to fits of fierce resentment, and at times fiery spirits will out and kindle conflagrations the stifling of which entails far-reaching consequences and suffering. And at such times the innocent are as like to suffer as the guilty, more like, perhaps, since the latter, with their foreknowledge of coming events, can also provide ways of escape. Palma was redeeming to the full the promise he had made to Hope when he asked her to marry him. In her simple schemes of amelioration, he was with her to the extent of her will. Against anything beyond, he set his face like a flint, as indeed she did herself. The people were nominally free, but they were not educated up to freedom. It was her aim, as it had been her father's, to lift them out of the sloughs, so that in due time they should be able to put their unknown powers to noblest uses. But as to any violent and precipitant exhibition of these as yet immatured powers, they never ceased to warn their poor folk with all the strength that was in them, and their poor folk met their warnings with vehement denial of any remotest thought of any such intentions, and talked among themselves afterwards in ways that would have given Serge Palma nightmares and powder magazines if he had dreamt of them. He regarded some of her agents with considerable doubt, though she had chosen them with the utmost care and discrimination, and had tried them well before she leaned to any extent upon them. Now that fellow Petrov, Hope, do you feel quite safe with him? He asked her one day, when Dmitri of that name had come creeping up to beg Hope Ivanovna's assistance for Katerina, wife of Nicholas Korba. Katerina was expecting to be laid up, and her husband had managed to get into the hands of the police. I've known him a very long time now, Serge, and I have never found him take a kopeck for himself of what I have given him for other people. I wish he'd make more noise when he walks, said Palma, smiling himself at the meagerness of his grounds for disliking Dmitri. He goes along like a snake and it's all I can do to keep from putting my foot on him. He is very quiet, but you see, they learned to be that in the old times, and some of them can't get out of it. Well, we can only trust in Providence that they put the money you give them to the uses you intend. Where I give money, they are mostly in such want that they would grudge it being used for anything else. But you are quite right, Serge. There is a risk, and I don't see how we can eliminate it more than we are doing by exercising every possible care and watchfulness. You assumed a great responsibility when you took over me and my work. I have never regretted it, my dear, and never shall, whatever comes or goes. You have opened the eyes of my understanding. In time, I do believe you will make a fairly good man of me. You are very good to me, and to give up so much for me, Serge. You are a bigger man than I thought. With such a teacher who could fail to grow, I have only one regret in life, and that is that I cannot make you Tsarina and give you a free hand to work your fullest will. I wish you could, but the one without the other would be very little use. It is not the Tsar or Tsarina who obstruct, but those below them, and how they will ever be brought round I do not know. Well, all I want is that we should so carry on the work that it may not bring us into collision with the powers that be, for in that case, the work would suffer check. We also, perhaps. Our intentions are good, at all events, she said thoughtfully. And for the rest, as you say, we can only trust in Providence. Ah, my dear, good intentions, they say, pave the road to Siberia, he said with a smile. But we'll do our best to keep on the right side of that line, at all events.